All right, welcome everybody. It is it's November 2nd, 3rd already? Beginning of November, Daylight Savings, worst day of the year. We're Gym Therapy Inc. We're here with a very special guest, Josh Hopkins. We've been looking forward to doing this for a little bit. Josh has a master's in health science and a bachelor's in exercise physiology, father, husband, overall good guy in the community. Kind of wanted to share his story a little bit, get some expertise, but I'll be hosting today. I'm Justin, we got Trista, and kind of looking forward to getting into this, but I have to start everything off with some bad news. We didn't win Sexiest Podcasters of the Year. The Kelseys won it. I mean, look at us.
I mean,
look at
it's
us.
fair.
The Kelseys won it.
I support that.
All right, yeah. All right. Trista, do you want to cover some what's new with you? I figured I'd ask you right when you're taking a drink, so.
So we got back from the CrossFit Games with Jasmine. She was one of our last podcasts. She got 4th in her division. She was hanging on tough to 3rd place all weekend long. And it was just came down to this final workout. And the girl that was in 4th did exactly what she had to do to get 3rd. She won 1st place in that workout and just, and it was one of those things, this was our first time doing a in-person competition with her. So it was a really good experience. So first adaptive athlete that I've ever worked with.
Oh, wow.
So we've nailed it. This is her 3rd CrossFit Games, and she was 4th last year, 4th again this year, but this time we got to be in person, which made it actually more special. She got to experience the whole thing, and you just feel kind of like a superstar while you're there. You know, people are congratulating you and cheering you on, and hearing her name being announced over the broadcast is like it just gives you chills.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Coach.
Thanks.
Yeah,
it was
great
good.
Job. New stuff with us. We are going to do our coat drive again this year. We're thinking maybe early December. We got to actually start getting on that. Brantley, the young man that gave us the inspiration for the idea a couple years ago, he and his mom are going to head it this year because of how busy we are. So we're going to try to get that. We were going to do it at the Climber Fire Hall, but with the flood in September, whenever that was, their fire hall is still not back up. So we might have to do it at the gym again. I'm assuming that's okay with everything. As you guys know, I switched jobs a few months ago. I'm at Evansburg Yamaha, so anybody needs anything, we got e-bikes are on sale this month. They are 60% off, and yeah, they're normally like $5-6 grand. You can buy them for under $3 right now.
Oh, that's a great Christmas gift.
Yeah, they do 28 miles an hour, just in case you wanted to know. And then,
Yeah, I see them buzzing down the street all the time.
Yeah. And we have some side-by-sides that are on end-of-year clearance too. You can actually buy an 850 two-seater right now for under 13 grand, which is a great price. So if anybody needs anything, just reach out. But with that being said, let's introduce Josh. What do you got going on?
Just busy with work. I am a oncology business manager for a pharmaceutical company. We work in oncology. So this time of year is, you're always kind of thinking about people and their struggles with cancer and families, and it's kind of a very surreal time, and it makes it doubly as hard, when your profession's around people being sick and dying and stuff. And then you couple the holidays, which are stressful enough on it, so it's kind of always a heightened anxiety time of year for me, just trying to be, thinking about patients and people and families and stuff. Then basketball starts up. I am an assistant girls basketball coach at Purchase Line. My daughter is 18, so this will be her senior year, so that's another thing I'm just struggling with. And you guys can appreciate this. You know how much athletes put into their craft, and she's worked relentlessly. So it's bittersweet. It's exciting to see the season come and all the work pay off, but it's going to come to an end, and that's sad. To even think about that as a dad. But yeah, other than that, it's for me, it's just trying to be a good dad too, be a good husband, be available for my wife. So you take all those roles and you think, man, we're busy. We're busy as coaches and family, parents and spouses and all those things. So, like you guys, burning the candle at both ends.
That's right. We're going to talk about a handful of things today.
Yeah.
And one of them is going to be like masculinity and femininity and what it's like to be a father and how we grew up in our community with some of the, toxic masculinity and how you do things. So I'm excited to do that. One thing I do want to talk about before we get into it is what you said you've had some stuff in the past and want to kind of go over how you've overcome some obstacles and things like that. What's your main message? What do you want to kind of get out of this?
Yeah, I think, and we were talking about this a little bit ago. I think everyone has a story, and if at the end of the day, it's like, what do you gather? What have you learned from that story? Because it's a journey. We can all choose to take the bifurcation of the road. Is did you go left, do you go right, whatever. And for me, it's just been about this kind of resurgence around trauma, passing on trauma. My story starts even before I was part of the story. My parents were 50 and 17 when they got married. 50 and 17 when they had a kid. I don't know where marriage comes into this. Then it was like 17 and 19 when they were pregnant again, and 19 and 21. And so my mom, God love her, is 21 with 3 kids.
Wow.
She's 19 with 3 kids. My dad's 21. So kids raising kids, and you just start to learn as a dad myself, like how tough it is, no matter what age you are, how prepared you are, to live with kids, to live in a society that asks so much of people. And I think that's kind of where my story starts is, we grew up, the first place I remember was a single wide trailer outside of Burnside with no electricity, no running water. And my parents were kind of always playing from behind. My dad, we stayed in Purchase Line School District till I think I was in kindergarten. Then my dad got a job for working for this Hodge Masonry, which worked on Camden Yards Baseball Stadium. And he lived in his car, him and my uncle, till they made enough money to bring us down and rent an apartment. So a couple, 4 or 5 years down there, and that's kind of when I noticed my dad's drug issues. I would find joints rolled up all over the house. I'm like, what are these?
Yeah. Why do they smell funny?
Yeah. Well, yeah, why are these candy cigarettes not candy? But anyway, so, you just start to think, and I'm just kind of paraphrasing some of the big things that I remember that kind of set you off in this path. And forever, I just remember my mom being like a giver and kind and always trying to nurture and always trying to kind of make up for the void and, what parenting we weren't getting from my dad. Fast forward to, I think it was November 14th, 1990, my uncle, who lived with us and worked with my dad, moved back to Pennsylvania and died on his birthday. That sent just my family in a spiral. We watched my grandmother smoke herself into the ground. She would literally say, later on in life, I ended up being her caretaker, take her all of her appointments and stuff. She said, I'm trying to kill myself because I don't know how to deal with this grief. And then my dad, so his brother lives with us, my Uncle Dale, lives with us and moves home and wasn't home for too many months that died on his birthday. And this is my dad's baby brother. Yeah. So it just sent my dad into a whirlwind. Then he starts, doubling down on the booze and the drugs. And, we moved back to Pennsylvania. We could help for my grandparents, build a house. And now we're trying to be the family that doesn't have problems, that has problems. You're hiding them from everybody. And you remember the shame and stuff about, free lunches and just the different stuff I can remember through my life thinking, man, what, at the time you don't think they're a big deal, but as a coach and as a parent of kids, you're like, man, that would be a lot to go through.
Absolutely. That's a lot of trauma in a very short time.
Yeah, and that's just the stuff I feel like sharing.
Well, yeah. And for so long, it was normalcy. That's what we grew up with. My dad had to retire. He had polio, so he had to retire whenever I was about 12 years old.
Know that, man.
Yeah, and he's 73 years old. Actually, just broke his leg a couple months ago, but beat cancer, beat COVID in the same week. And we same thing, single wide trailer. We had an indoor wood furnace, so we're standing around it with our shirts up in the morning when it's 50 degrees in the house, pipes frozen. So
yeah, we would. My mom would, because we got assistance with gas. We would use the oven to heat the house. In the morning we'd be all kind of huddled around the thing. But yeah, so the very first time I realized I needed help or I needed something in my life to kind of get me off this anxiety path that I was on was when my uncle died. I said to myself, this is before I knew what manifesting was, but this is something that I've seen in my life work over and over again. And the cool part is I came to the conclusion of it far before I was 13, far before I was old enough to realize how powerful it was. It was manifesting. I prayed every night for 5 things. One of them, and I'll share a couple, that I'm comfortable sharing, but one of them was like, I just don't want to forget my uncle. Because at that young of an age, I started to think, it's just weird. You just die. Like you do all these things in your life and you build a business or you have a family and you just die and that's it. And then you just go away. So I pledged to myself, I will not forget this man. So much so I remember his birthday. It's on the day he died. I remember the trucks he drove. I still to this night when I lay my head down and I pray or I think about it. And I have missed some nights, but I still think about it because I'm like, that's how I'm going to honor this person. Mm-hmm. So one of them was I never forget him. Another one was I was going to make a certain amount of money at a certain time because I didn't want to live broke. And every time I've set myself on it, now I think some people think you can manifest and you just think about it and it happens. I think manifesting is the concentration of something that you care about so much that the opportunities to achieve it start popping up.
Yes,
You know
I
what I'm
agree.
saying? Do you agree with that? Cool.
100%.
Because I've had other people like, no, you can just think about it and visualize it and it happens. And I'm like, visualization without action to me is dumb. You know what I mean? Because I've visualized some stuff, abs, and those babies aren't just cooking. You know what I mean? They're not just
Exactly.
popping up for no reason.
And job opportunities aren't just going to pop up when you're playing video games on your couch and not looking.
Oh, I agree.
You have to actively put in the work emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and also put yourself out there.
I agree 100%.
For the opportunity.
Yeah, but I do think it starts with the visualization and the kind of the desire. So that was really the first thing I thought, man, if I put my mind to stuff, and then I started thinking very differently about myself. I'm capable of things. Now, that wasn't always linear. It wasn't like I'm 13 and now everything's falling this straight path in my life. I've had problems with drinking and substances and different stuff. And then you meet people and you're kind of back on that path. So we grew up in an abusive home. I don't know if I jokingly or affectionately call it, like we grew up in Iraq. It's just like there was conflicts all the time. And I just remember having this heightened sense of anxiety. Like I always felt like something was going to get me and I carry that to this day where I'm in an environment. I'm like, I'm a big guy. I'm capable of handling myself. Why do I feel this uneasiness?
Do you have that feeling too where if you walk into a room and people are fighting, like you can sense it?
I can feel it.
I'm the same way.
And I don't know if that's because as a kid, you're so attuned to that. And our emotional intelligence is like, I don't want to trigger anybody. I'm not trying to piss this guy off. You know what I mean?
You're trying to keep safe. You're trying to keep peace.
Yeah.
Are you the mediator in your family? And you're trying to solve
I
problems?
was for a while. I think now I've distanced myself a little bit because now, as we all know, every family has problems. Every family has things. And I felt like at times I was overcompensating to find answers. So I was like, and I know I could drive my sister nuts because if she has a problem, I want to give her all my opinion on how to fix it. She's like, well, I'm smart. Like, I got this too. So I've tried to do less of that and let people come to their own conclusion. But I'm not afraid at any point if I think someone's not safe for something to mediate or to whatever. But, you realize old habits die hard. And some people just want to kind of do their own thing. So anyway, I get to fast forward over a bunch of, you guys don't want to hear the stories about kids getting their ass kicked. That's not the fun part of podcasting. But get to a point in my life where I'm in college. The first person in my family to graduate college. And I started met my wife, played football in college, then met my wife. And then I really started back into like that manifesting and praying, what kind of life do I want? And from there, get my first job in sales, then in pharmaceuticals, get a master's, fast forward, whatever. So I'm in my first oncology job. My very first, and you guys will appreciate this because you're from here, my very first interaction in an office. I'm sitting in Du Bois Cancer Center, and I sit beside a lady, and she's pulling out clumps of hair and putting it in a trash can between us. And I'm like, holy shit, like this is serious. So from that day on, I was like, I'm going to do really well with this. Like if I can help someone live longer, I'm going to do really well with this. Well, at that time's going on, I lost one of my grandparents. And my grandparents were young, as I just mentioned, we were younger. My parents were younger than they had us, so we had my grandparents my whole adult life, which was unbelievable. Lose 3 grandparents and my dad all within 4 years and starting this job. And then I started getting this opinion, like this is where my anxiety was just bananas. I started getting this opinion about life, like it's just about dying. Like we're all just gonna die. And then I get into stoicism, I get into different things, but what really kind of set me forward or set me on a good path was cognitive behavioral therapy. It was like challenging these negative thoughts I had all the time. And there's what they call 10 cognitive dissonances. So there's like overthinking, overgeneralizing, catastrophizing. And when I started reading about this, like I do every freaking one of these. I'm like a poster child for anxiety. And to a point you mentioned earlier, it's just like I felt like I was correcting things that I didn't know were wrong about me, or I feel like I was trying to be someone. Maybe this is a better way of saying it. I feel like I was trying to be someone that people told me I was. And I was supposed to be this masculine guy and this tough guy and all this. And then I'm like, whoa, I just feel like a vulnerable kid. I feel like so emotional and so sad all the time and so anxious. And I thought, I can't live with this weight. And I went and sought out a therapist. And the guy was actually from town. He was phenomenal. He doesn't live here anymore. But he taught me how to think about my thoughts and kind of how to challenge my thoughts. And I thought, you get a mechanic to look at your car. You get painters to do like specific thing in your life. Why didn't anyone tell me that there was a professional out there that would help me think about the way I'm thinking? And I'll tell you what, he just challenged some of the ridiculous overgeneralizations or catastrophe. Oh, if I have to go into medicine, I'm going to have every side effect. And I'm going to be so sick, and I'm not going to. He's like, whoa, Josh, you work in oncology. Why are you melting down? I'm like, well, everything's not safe.
But there was a fear too around taking any medications for anxiety, all of this, because it's crazy pills. And that was drilled into us very, very young age. And you think about, too, if you look back on your fighting, stuff like that, you're getting fight. You were a hurt kid.
Yeah.
So you were taking that hurt out on other people, and probably the only way you knew how from the way you grew up.
It was physical.
Yeah.
We did a class on, what was that, the positive intelligence?
Emotional intelligence.
Emotional intelligence.
I saw that podcast.
And I, one day, you talk negatively about yourself. I still do it all the time. My therapist, I try to go once a week. She's always, stop the stinking thinking. That's what I do. And one of the things in that was, take a look at a picture of yourself as a kid and say something negative to that kid. You would never say something negative to any kid. So why are you going to say something negative to yourself? So I actually sent a picture of myself to Trista one time. I'm like, imagine telling that kid he's an asshole, you know?
Oh, wow.
That's a really deep one. I have
write that one down.
Yeah.
I have an altar that I kind of meditate at, and I keep stuff on there of things that are important to me or people that are important to me. Leroy's on there, and there's a picture of my brother and I as children. And I often look at that picture when I meditate to just kind of honor who we were as kids and love us. Because my parents were also kids raising kids, and my dad was away most of our lives. So, and your mom was a nurturer, the caregiver, because she had to be there. She had to be both parents, and that's a tough role. You think for your parents, one, being away has to be terrible.
Yeah.
And two, having the weight of everything on you, not having a lot of money. I remember my mom, my dad giving us $40 for the week with 2 kids. Then it was a lot more money than it is now. Yeah. But I mean,
imagine that. It's so funny you say that because I hand my kids whatever money they need to have the nicest time they can have.
Yeah.
My mom and dad were like, here's $5. If you and your sister and brother can eat at McDonald's, that's great. We were so grateful for that. But it's funny, I think everyone we grew up with was poor.
Yeah.
And I'm not disparaging.
No, but we all hid it from each other too.
100%.
And we were all embarrassed about it. We got $2 a week. There was 5 of us, so it was
Yeah, I remember being so ashamed of free lunches for some reason. I get that pink ticket at Purchase.
Oh yeah.
But I was so happy to eat it. It's not like we didn't have food at home. It just was so ashamed that other kids are handing cash every day to somebody. I'm like, you have a 10 in your pocket? Dude, I get them with my birthday and Christmas. You know what I mean? But here's another funny, you want to talk about just things you think about. We didn't have carpet in my house for the longest time. And my buddies were sick after a couple years of being, you're still renovating? You were still, you know what I mean? We just had a subfloor and carpets and shit on it. And I'm like, we can't figure out what color we want or the money to buy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we lied to each other. My sister tells this story all the time. She's just we tried so hard for people outwardly to think that we were okay. And on the inside is where the work needed done, and her, my sister, my brother, my dad, or my mom and I, the 4 of us had each other, but the damage was kind of done, and now we're all kind of reeling. And then sometimes I think when our relationships, there's a tension because we've not resolved all these things, and then we all feel we're dealt a bad hand. So sometimes when we talk, that pity comes in instead of work. You know what I'm saying? It's just it's easier to say, oh, that suck, and then we talk about it. I'm like, we're never moving forward from the same conversation. Where I then go home and do the work. And I think another thing that's really helped me is Stoic philosophy, and it fits right in line with cognitive behavioral therapy. There's actually a book by Donald Robertson called How to Think Like a Roman Emperor. It weaves the story of Marcus Aurelius Stoicism in with cognitive behavioral lessons of today and how you'd apply it. And I thought, God, to think about 2,000 plus years ago, this was the wisdom of the day, and now cognitive therapy, as far as talk therapy, is 60% effective. It's even more effective in some cases at SSRIs and different things. So to think that therapy or that modality was available then, and it's still kind of relevant today, means that shit's got to work.
It's working, yeah.
So I would tell anyone else, if people were struggling with anxiety or depression or grief or whatever, it's reevaluate your thoughts. And are they serving you? I mean, that's another big thing. I say things, and I think about this about nutrition. Trista, you'll appreciate this, is what you put in your body is going to fuel your workouts. Mm-hmm. What you put in your mind is going to fuel your thoughts. And even the election's going on and everybody's upset one way or the other. And I thought, God, why are we all feeding into this? There's a group of human beings that work out of one building that when the camera's off, they all get along. And here we all are out here trying to fight this fight about 20% of the stuff that we don't agree on. Why don't we ever focus on the 80% of stuff we agree on?
Yeah.
I mean, because everyone wants to be safe. Everybody wants a healthy place to live. I mean, but that's the things we're not fighting about. So I try to you can almost palpate the anxiety that people have this time of year. Holidays are coming, elections coming, and I just thought, you know what? If there's one message I want to say today, is just like, try to be your authentic self. Try to show up for people, for everyone, not your people, every person. I don't think there's enough people out there just being vulnerable and helping and trying to think about, one of the virtues of stoicism is justice. And it's not justice like you did something wrong and now you get punished. Justice is like, how do you move the greater good forward?
Absolutely.
And I don't know if there's enough people focus on that. And there's 4 stoic virtues that I try to, and I've added my own, but it's courage to do the right thing. It's wisdom, continue to learn. Like this, to me, this is the first time I've ever been on a podcast, but I thought, how cool is it that someone thought enough of me that I'm gonna have to sharpen some skills up and do stuff. So I was just really honored you guys asked me. Temperance, that's a big one for me. Mm-hmm. Like how not to use even food, how not to use pornography, how not to use all these, and we can talk about pornography, I think, which is the bane of young men's existence. I think
and it's so available.
It's so
all
available.
the time.
So available.
And like back when I always joke around, like, back when I was a kid, if I wanted to send a girl a picture, I'd have to send it in the mail and hope
I'd have to draw the damn thing.
And not to mention that everything is sexualized.
Oh yeah.
Like I was watching,
Halloween.
CrossFit's my sport.
I just
Love
watched
CrossFit. Literally, there's like most of the girls that are athletes, like they have low body fat, so they have smaller chests. The couple that do, they're like running in slow motion. I'm like, you guys know what you're
what are you
doing.
doing?
That drives me insane.
Right.
Like if you're not doing it for them, like don't do it to these people too. You don't see it. They're not filming the men from behind with their butts bouncing
shaking.
in slow motion. Like that drives me nuts. And it's so over sexualized, like everything is, to the point that people go onto Instagram, especially women. I tell women all the time, unfollow accounts that make you feel like shit about yourself.
Amen.
If you are constantly just using someone as a comparison to your own body, you are going to just be in this shame spiral because where none of us are built the same.
So you just came to the same conclusion that I came to about pornography, the way you talk about sexualization of the women. Like, how does a man, I'm 43, how does a man think his wife, and my wife has had 2 kids from me, we have lost a child, she has been there for me through everything, she is an unbelievable human being. How would I expect her, she's in her mid-40s and she's an absolute smoke show, but how does she continue to compete against 19, 20-year-olds that are online and naked? Like, so I don't think I'm honoring my wife if I'm looking at pornography. I'm like, how does she stand a chance?
Yeah.
And I can Google anything I want to look at, or, you know what I mean? I'm saying, so I was on a soapbox. I was standing in front of a bunch of guys hunting, talk about, masculinity, where I just got done hunting, and this topic came up. And I just thought, whoa, hold on. I said, this is something I'll stand very firm on. If that's where you spend your time, your relationship's doomed. Mm-hmm. I spend my time gassing my wife up, like, you look good. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Because then she's like, oh, he's interested in me. And then my life is better at home, for that reason. I got buddies that call me like, my wife's a pig, she's this or that. I'm like, dude, if that's what you're putting out, your relationship can't be good at home.
Yeah.
And it's not good at home. So I mean, I realize that very well too. Words have power, our actions have power. And if they're not centered on something, you know what I'm saying? Like you're getting what you put into the world. And I just think,
and into your relationship.
100% agree. So anyway, I got off. I don't know why pornography had to come up. Apparently, I had an axe to grind.
Yeah. Well, and that whole topic right there, like the courage to stand up in front of people, especially when you're in a group full of hunters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're in that. That's a huge deal to have the courage to be like, nah, that's not for me.
No.
And for the longest time in my life, like I was the peacekeeper, and I was the one to just be like, oh, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say anything, even though it went against my values. So that's cool to hear someone sticking up for what they actually believe in.
Yeah, I just, we see the deterioration of our young people, and I don't know what it is. And doesn't that sound old to say that kind of shit, though?
Oh, we are old. I saw videos that were like, what do you consider old? They're asking like these young hockey players.
You're not even
like,
40 yet, are you?
They're like, after 1990, if you're born after 1990 or 95. And I'm like, God.
You're a lot younger than me, though.
I'm 39. I'm going to be 39
Yeah,
this
I knew
month.
you weren't even 40.
Yeah.
You're not even 40 yet, are you?
I'll be 41 in 3 weeks.
Okay, so you're on the wrong side of 40 also.
Yeah, not great.
I'll be 44 in November. But some of this stuff, like this wisdom, and I don't know that I have all the answers, but some of this stuff I wish I would have had someone tell me earlier. And that was why I was compelled to come on this. I'm like, if a couple of the guys that are trained at my house or, whatever, hear some of the stuff that you don't feel comfortable talking to everyone about, I think you guys have done your job, getting those kind of messages out. And another thing I'm getting better at is I'm getting better at keeping my opinion to myself about the way people get to where they need to go. Meaning, so like religion was one of these things we grew up like you had to do this, you had to be this, you had to think this way. I'm to the point now, if you can find peace, and I have my own opinions, and if anyone asks me, I would give them to them, but if you can find peace and sovereignty in your own mind, I don't care how people get there. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I don't know many devout Buddhists that are out killing Christians or, you know, whatever. Like, whatever you do, just do whatever you do, however you find peace. I honor the fact that people are trying, you know, more so than I think there's a right answer. So
I don't know that there ever it would be a right or wrong answer. I believe that what you put your heart into is where you go. So if you believe that you're going to a heaven, that you'll be there. If you think that you're going to be reincarnated, I think that happens too. I think it's what you truly believe with your heart and soul. And also if you're a good person.
Yeah.
You know, like there are some really terrible religious people. They are terrible, judgmental, unkind people.
Yep. So you said, so I think I alluded to this earlier when the three of us were talking. I've done, for some reason, people think that I'm the guy to marry them. So I've done 5 weddings. And one of the things that keeps coming up is the young guys will ask me like, hey, give me some advice. You know, what do you think? And you said about being a good person. The one thing I talk about a lot is like, it's not enough to be a good man. You have to be good at being a man. Now, what's that look like? So in the context of what I think being a good man is like teaching my daughters to take up space and to be heard and to be who they're supposed to be and to not be marginalized or minimized. But I think also it's teaching my kids how to be a good person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like how to value people for your differences and just how to be kind. And one thing that I will not fail my kids on is love, is the idea of giving. I think that's what we're put on the earth for, is giving and receiving love. And that could come in the way of helping people. It could come in the way of being there, you know, standing up for people, whatever it is. I just don't know what other virtue or whatever thing what is our North Star as human beings if it's not to be good to each other? You know what I'm saying? So we were talking a little bit about toxic masculinity. And I think that's probably where that conversation about porno comes in, is just like, I don't want to value a person based on the dirty thing they're willing to do or, you know, lust or whatever that person. I want to gauge people on the value that they bring to my relationships. I want to, you know, that's what I think is important. It's like, what can you bring to a relationship? And not just for me, how are you showing up for everybody? But I think toxic, however you use it with masculinity or whatever, it's to take the antithesis, not the antithesis, but the bipolars of that trait and living in the extreme. You know, like, I think being brave and stand up for your family and those kind of things are masculine in nature, providing. I think toxic is when you take it to the extreme. It's like, you know, the all or nothing, or you do it my way, you know, that kind of stuff. And I think that's where, you know, we get into these young guys with women and sexual relationships and stuff. It's like having 50 partners and not valuing people for who they are. So I've been trying to be very cognizant. And that's a hard conversation for a 43-year-old guy to have with an 18-year-old girl. You know, my daughter's 18 and she's beautiful, but I know what's coming. You know, there's sexualization, there's this and that. And I just want my girls to be high value.
I think teaching her to take up space is probably one of the best skills that you can teach her. It's something I didn't have. I don't think that I always made myself small to make other people comfortable.
Room for everybody else.
Yeah. And it's such when you know now that that's what you're doing, like I am so uncomfortable when people congratulate me or people do things and I'm like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Like all the time.
Yeah.
And I have to be at that point now where people are like, hey, great job, coach. Like you did good. You got these people to this position. Like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, like I did help this happen and I should be proud of that. And it's okay to like honor that. And we downplay as women our accomplishments so much, and we're often overlooked, we're often overseen for positions and all of that. So I think like when you said like helping her take up space and using her voice, not only at home or in school, but in relationships.
100%.
We don't realize what's healthy love and what is controlling until we're probably in our mid-20s.
I agree.
As women. Like we have no idea that like someone tracking your location, following where you're at all the time in a teenage relationship is not normal and not healthy.
Unless it's your dad tracking.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Or I mean like
I
you
agree.
can with your spouse, like when you're at that point in your life like, hey, I haven't heard from you. You look and see, make sure that they're safe.
Trust,
But it's like where they're tracking to a point where it's, it's not healthy.
I'll say this about you, and you have humility about you because you've been successful in this, and you've owned this business, and people come, and you have coaches that you're mentoring and doing stuff with. Like, I think there's a difference between, I can see your authentic humility, and then you're a little bit like me. I don't like to hear praise, and I'm like, ugh. But I think I had someone tell me this, like, if I give you praise, it's a gift from me to you.
Yeah.
And I think it's more now about, for me, listening about the gift someone's trying to give me. And I'm like, oh, thank you for that. Because even my mom, like, oh, you've lost weight. And I'm like, you don't have to say nice stuff about me. I love you unconditionally. You know what I mean? But I know it's my mom's way of saying something nice to me and honoring me. So I've had to change that. But there's still humility. I still kind of do the self-deprecating thing.
Yeah.
Do you do that ever? Mm-hmm. And I don't know where that comes from. I wish I could stop it.
I think a lot of it is, we were taught not to brag as kids.
Yeah.
Like, no, brag, don't rub it in people's face. And so then you have this thing about like being small where it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, but I didn't do this. Or someone says, congratulations. Yeah, but I didn't. So I've been working on the same thing where people congratulate me or they give me a compliment. Instead of being awkward, I say thank you. And I just and I talk through it in my head and not out loud, but I have to be like, it's okay to take compliments. It's and it's okay to post your accomplishments online because a lot of times I would think like, I don't want to brag about this or brag about that. But when I see other people posting their accomplishments, I like congratulate them or honor them. And in the same light, you are taking that space to inspire someone else that they can do the same thing. Yeah,
I think the line of work you're in, your accomplishments make other people feel like things are, because I've heard you and seen you talk about, I follow you online and, talk about where you're at in your body. And I've seen you super lean and super jacked and you've been in all these places and I've seen you perform unbelievable at every stage of your life. And I think that's inspiring because your message, especially to young women, especially in fitness, especially in light of Ozempic and all these things we got going on, you've been for our community steadfast in positive body and like, look how capable my body is at whatever I'm at. And so if I'm a young girl, that's what I would pick up on the kind of stuff you share. And I hope that's your message.
It is.
Okay.
Absolutely is.
Because I've seen you do your macros and stuff and cut, and you were crazy lean. And you said, I didn't feel that great there. But you did it, and you showed you could do it. So I think the stuff you put out is fantastic.
And it actually took me to an unhealthy place of being crazy, crazy lean.
Yeah. And
it took away from my relationship in my marriage. It took away, I put my worth on a number, on a scale, more than I did with, hey, I'm building these relationships, or hey, I'm getting healthier with food, I'm fueling. I was focused on a number for a long time. And then when I went to therapy, and I talked in therapy about that, like after Leroy died, I went to therapy, and she's like, why did you want to weigh that weight? And I was like, well, that's what I heard in high school.
First off.
And she was like, what? She's like, you're a whole ass adult now. Like,
15 years ago called.
So that was a big eye-opening thing for me. And I remember struggling to hit certain lifts at certain weights because I was so lean. And like your hair gets thin, and that's just not healthy, but we're conditioned to believe abs equal health. And that's not it either. And now we're in this whole other world of perimenopause will be coming up for me. I'm almost 40. I have friends that are in their 40s that are going through it. I have women at the gym that are in their 50s and 60s that are in menopause. I have to evolve and I have to learn the right things to tell them to do with their bodies
at that point in their life.
And also learn from them women too.
Yes.
The ones that speak the good message back to you and have good people to look up to.
And it's cold in here because we have menopausal women in here, and you keep it cold in the gym because they will let you know that it's too hot.
I've done a couple workouts here. They get hot.
Yes.
Whether you want them to or not.
And I think that, just like learning and evolving and, constantly learning.
Oh, that's a big one.
That's for me, like I read books like Stacey Sims has a book called Roar Next Level that talk about like menopausal health and like sex hormones, all of those things.
It's funny you should bring it up.
So smart.
If I was to do something that I was like really passionate about, it would probably be something on that end of medicine because at 43, I had a bunch of diagnosed concussions when I played college football to the point where I'm like, something's going wrong here. I was on corticosteroids for my asthma for the longest time. And I didn't know these affect your pineal gland. And, my testosterone forever has been like under 300. And when I finally got it evaluated, they were like, why are you walking around at a 274 at 35. I'm like, yeah, I didn't never know what it was to begin with. So I
Still don't.
I see.
You're saying numbers, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's something like I've tried natural approaches. I've tried all these different approaches. My wife and I are like, how do we longevity, those kind of things. So I got into pregnenolone and progesterone and DHEA and different hormone levels and started tracking all of my lipids and different things, just because I thought, as a informed consumer, it's not good enough for me just to go and have a doctor say, well, you're good. Does good mean okay, or does good mean optimal? So that's really something. After I got my master's, I'm like, well, I really wish if I could open a wellness clinic and talk about mental health and talk about optimal blood panels and talk about menopause. And, there's a thing called andropause, is like where men, you start to tick off that testosterone and your bones get frail and different things. And the power of, I know a lot of people that supplement different hormones, but how women go off a cliff. I mean, they kind of cruise along. And then once you get out of your child, rearing years, you come off a cliff. Men don't notice as much because it's kind of a gradual thing.
Yes.
But women, with my wife, and like I said, I trained one of our best friends. They're 45 and 47 or whatever, mid 40s, and you hear these conversations, and you're like, this is a real shit that I'm hearing every week or every couple of days that we train, that they're facing, they're dealing with, and I'm like, we live in such a toxic world with all these endocrine disrupting chemicals and plastics and fragrances and all these things. I don't think anyone should feel ashamed if they get to a point in life where they need supplemental estrogen or progesterone or testosterone or whatever. Because I used to think, as a young, macho, cocky 20-year-old, why would people need that? I could bench 405, and I'm like, why would you get a plastic surgery? I'm to the point now, if you can do something to enjoy your time more on this planet, you should get it done.
Yeah.
Because you get put in the ground with the rest of us, and you can go feeling as optimal as you can till you're 80, or you can go at 70, and crash and burn. So I knew you said we maybe talk about some of those things. If you want to go that direction, I'm happy to go that direction. If not, I'm happy to take your lead.
No, I'm comfortable going however.
Can we take a
this
pee
stuff
break
goes.
real quick?
Yeah, we're gonna we'll take a quick break and we'll come back. All right, we're back after a little break. I want to talk about blood work. So that was something interesting you brought up to me, and this is something I know absolutely nothing about. So what can you tell us about it? What's worked for you, and what do you think works for other people?
Yeah, so I just think in the vein of like trying to stay on this side of the ground. After I dealt with all my anxiety and these health issues, I'm like, well, if I want to be healthy and I want to be, I want to be alive, and I don't want to have this anxiety, this health anxiety, which I had, which was probably, the truth of the matter was, it was probably more of a health-based anxiety that I had, because my dad died of a heart attack at 53. I was 35. The last I saw him, they were pulling the life support tubes out of his throat. It was on Christmas Day, like 8 years ago. So my dad lived fast and hard. Drugs, alcohol, he drank all the time, and he never went to the doctor. Broke his wrist, he went to the doctor, that kind of stuff, but never went, had a check. And I just realized, even as tumultuous as our relationship was as he got older, I'm like, he's not well. He's smoking all the time. We have a family history of cardiovascular disease, and I kind of saw him deteriorating. I thought, I got to get ahead of this, because this is right at the time this is right in that cycle, or that zone I talked about earlier, like that 4 years where people were dying, and that's when I really started getting the health anxiety. I'm like, so what can I do? I can take control of this. So part of my my master's degree it's called health science from St. Francis. It was health policy, politics, ethics, disparity, but we talked pharmacology, we talked some blood work and stuff. So it really got me interested. Like, well, I should probably know and have an understanding of this. So I went into the lipid stuff. And there's all kind of different, opinions about lipids and good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. But what I think, if we just want to start there, what I have surmised is there was the Framingham study, and it talked about something called ApoB. And this wasn't on my radar. It was like HDL, LDL, and that's kind of all we were talking about, total cholesterol. And then these kind of two markers popped up, ApoB and then LP(a). LP(a) is more of a genetic thing, so you can get tested for this one time, have an idea where your LP(a) is, and you can use pharmacology to address that. Now, ApoB is linear to some degree with LDL. And being in pharmaceuticals doesn't mean I love all pharmaceuticals. I don't think that has to be the answer to everything. Now, I will say, if you have an elevated total cholesterol, high LDL, and you test this ApoB and it's high, with the use of like a Crestor, like a low-dose statin, and a PCSK9 inhibitor, if you don't want to use a statin, there's ways to move that number. But there is definitely a correlation to a higher ApoB and cardiovascular risk. So that's one of the things I've been monitoring. Now, an optimal level, they say, is anything under 60. My last one was 64. So I'm like, I'm getting close, but I know. So I just lost some weight, and it was like, well, if I don't want to get on a pharmaceutical, I better pull another lever. So I lost some weight. So
and this is something that's typically not shown in regular blood work. You have to ask for.
100%. Yeah, and this isn't an expensive test, but it's just. And I don't blame physicians on this. And I'm not a physician. This is just my take. I'm obviously not giving advice as much as I'm giving perspective. But I just feel like they're worked so hard, and they're in this payment scheme, or I don't want to say scheme, this payment design where you see volume of patients and you get kind of paid that way, fee for service. Now, if you look at the people that are kind of doing the a la carte, this is one they're including because they know, how powerful this ApoB marker is. So, when you get a typical total cholesterol, you might get an LDL, you might get an HDL, then you might get like they look at the smaller particles, like very low density LDL. That's probably the most I've seen ordered for somebody without them saying, hey, can I get a Lp(a), can I get an ApoB? But when you ask for it, it tells you a lot. And I think that also couples with metabolic health. Now, and Tris, I think we could, we'll cover the blood work stuff if you guys want, but I think this is where what you do as a profession is so highly important. What people need to understand about, movement. But if you look at typically what people do is they get an A1C when they're looking at their metabolic health. They get an A1C, maybe a fasted glucose. I don't think that's near enough because I think your glucose is a lag indicator of a fasted insulin that's probably been elevated for a long time. And we were sharing this on the break is like people are worried about, I don't eat too much protein because it will raise my mTOR and it's bad for longevity. When people's running around with a 10 plus higher insulin, your insulin's chronically elevated, and that keeps your mTOR signal. So I would say we want an insulin under 6. I would say an A1C under 5.7. I think the number is 5.6. And everything obviously more under that reduces your risk. I think if you're looking at blood glucose, they say under 100 it's not pre-diabetic. I've noticed when I've been my heaviest, I've been rolling around about 96. So I think 90 is probably the number you want because you start to get this, it's a lag, like I said, a lag indicator of an insulin that I've had elevated before. So I just think people, especially, and I'm going to lump you guys with me, our age.
Yeah.
I'm the understatement.
I'll be 41, yeah.
But these are things that we just don't get traditionally. And this isn't a bad idea to get, metabolic, lipids, and even our hormones. We talked about that a little bit on the first half before the break is like, your hormones your sex hormones do more than just, give you erections or give you muscles or for women, help you be fertile. But for women, like women and men, estrogen is important for bone density. Testosterone is important for muscle strength and, the very fact that you have muscle. I think that what Trista does with CrossFit addresses a bunch of things for longevity. First of all, adding muscle is a depot for glucose. It's a place to put glucose. You can store it as fat, you can put it in muscle. I think that if we're going to take care of people our age and older, it's like there has to be this kind of coming back to Jesus in the way of we've got to be strong, we've got to have muscle, and we've got to have a relatively higher VO2 max than probably what most of us run around today. And I think in CrossFit, you can accomplish both those. And I think CrossFit's a cool thing for the reasons you and I just talked about is like it's scalable. No one should be admitted from it. You don't have to get hurt. Everyone's like, you get hurt at CrossFit because it's your ego, and that was me.
Yep.
I got hurt benching, in college. I was getting ready to try to play at IEP, and I had 365 on the bar, and I went for the first one. I was like, oh, that felt kind of wonky. I'm going to get it a second one, even though I barely got the first one. I took it down and tore my first pec, and I'm like, that was not my form. That was my ego, because there was guys. I was training with a guy that was a 405 bencher, and I wanted to get 405 again. And so I think that's probably go with CrossFit. There's so much functionality in the movement, and I think the dose and the duration are what's important. Like how many times you do it and how much intensity you kind of do it with. But I think what you offer people, and especially the way you've been working with young kids, you're working with older people, that's absolutely something I hope comes back into like mainstream is the scalable versions of CrossFit, because I think it's so impactful.
The cool thing about CrossFit too, the founder of CrossFit, Greg Glassman, he had said, what we need for Olympic athletes and our grandparents, it varies by degree, not kind. So
I agree.
They're going to do the same kind of exercises. I could have a 6-year-old in here and we can be doing clean and jerks with little dumbbells, and I could have a 30-year-old in here moving a heavy barbell. And they're doing the same movements. We're just scaling it back to their ability. And I think that that is one of my favorite things about CrossFit. And it is for athletes. If more athletes would do CrossFit, and some workouts are 5 minutes, but they're high intensity, some are 30 minutes long, and it's like a long duration. If they have that constant mix of both, it's so important. And I wish that more people would understand you don't have to get hurt at CrossFit. If you listen to your coach, and you have coaches that are knowledgeable 100%. And are trained, that have been doing this for a long time, they can scale you where you need to be.
Yeah, you were over in the other building, and I did CrossFit for a couple months, and I was in the best shape of my adult life. I came here a couple years ago for a WOD. It was either New Year's Eve or New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to go do this. I think it's, you should do hard things. And I hadn't been training for that, and I was maybe the last one finished. You know what I mean? I thought, boy, was that humbling. But she stripped bar. I don't remember we were doing a clean and press or something at the end. I was just out of gas, and I think she stripped some weight off, and I was able to do it. But she was smart enough to say, well, dude's out of gas. I should probably, you know what I mean? One rep, I would have probably killed it. But after an hour workout, I was like, man. So I say all that to say, like, especially if we're thinking about longevity and being around to take care of our parents and having our parents around, there's two things I think, and I think the research starts to show this too. Obviously, you don't want to smoke. Smoking is probably the easiest way to get, be unhealthy from a cardiovascular perspective, from a cancer risk, increased cancer risk. But the two things that I think, if you're going to pull levers, total strength, they can even test it through grip strength, and then VO2 max are the two things that, by an order of magnitude, increase your opportunity to decrease mortality risk. So much so that I think those are probably more important than even diet. Diet moves the needle, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that less calories are probably better as we get older. And obviously in sport, it's definitely you might need to be at maintenance or higher if you're adding muscle or whatever. But from my standpoint, I eat too much. That's been proven, as I told you guys earlier. I've been 205 and 285, and I'm on the lower end now. But I know when I'm not healthy, I'm inflamed because I'm eating a bunch of processed food.
Yes.
And it's not serving any goal that I have.
It's crazy how much inflammation. We actually have a girl at the gym. She stopped eating processed foods, and she lowered her dairy intake. And her doctor told her they thought she had arthritis in her hands. She got rid of dairy and gluten, and does not have pain in her hands anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a huge deal, because they're like, basically, we can't do anything for you. It's arthritis. Well, she just tweaked her diet, and those things went away.
Yeah, as I've been getting processed food in my diet, the first thing I notice is that inflammatory water comes out. My face doesn't look like a stuffed pepper. You know what I mean? I don't look so inflamed.
It's weird, isn't it? And there are days, weekends, if you eat something more not towards your goals.
Right.
And the next day, you look at yourself in the mirror in the morning, and you're like, I'm puffy. My hands are puffy. That's stuff that I know that my body is like, hey, we don't like this.
It's my ankles. I don't know if you guys really this at all, but I can tell my ankles. I'm like, dude, you're so puffy. Your ankles, you can't even see the bone.
Mine is my hands.
My socks are tight.
My fingers, I'm like, they're like little sausages. I'm like, what is happening?
That's funny. And it's the stuff I think when you're 20 you take for granted is it's going to catch up with you. And I think that's what I'm trying to teach my girls is you should do hard things. You should get used to suffering on your own terms. You know what I'm saying? Do the step mill and do the things you don't want to do because it's good for you. And it's good for your health, but it's also, why not suffer on your own terms? Why not get used to building these habits? And I think that's an important part of any conversation you have is can you build enough good habits that you can lean on for the rest of your life? But food's tough at our house because I was brought up you have a birthday, we get a cake. You don't like the way you feel, you should eat something. There's a Christmas tree, Little Debbie in the thing. They taste delicious. And I think I've done that to my kids a little bit where I'm like, hey, we are together. We should celebrate the very fact that it's just you and I shopping, so we should get ice cream. And I'm like, well, isn't just me and you being together enough and celebrating each other? And so I have personally I want to help fix what I helped created, but that was something, talking about our lives. We didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't do a lot of things, but what we did have was at least good food. And we would just sit around and just pound cake and ice cream and government peanut butter.
Well, growing up, with not a lot of stability, a lot of families, that's what they did. My mom grew up really poor.
Yeah.
And when they had food, they emotionally ate to deal with the trauma. And then they pass that down to you, and you're like, 100%. Oh, you're feeling sad? Let's have brownies. Oh, you're feeling this? Let's eat this. And then you start associating your feelings and feeling good by food.
100%.
And that makes that roller coaster. And then then you eat it, right? And then you're in this shame spiral down of, I shouldn't have ate that.
Yeah, like, what a
this is
fat
terrible.
ass. Why did I do that?
And finding the healthy balance of like, hey, it's grandma's 90th birthday.
We
Let's
should
eat
celebrate.
cake. Or
Right.
it's like the 8th birthday of the month and we're all eating cake again and again and again. Like that makes a big difference. And I like what Justin's family does. They have one cake for, if there's like 5 people in the family that have a birthday, they have one cake and that's
that
it.
month.
And that's it. Yeah.
Which makes a ton of sense.
It does.
And my sister is a cake maker, so she had Jen Himes Baking. If you want to follow her on Facebook,
What was
you guys
it in
do.
here? I'm second.
It was called Jenny Cakes LLC. So she does a great job. She makes them for weddings and all that stuff. So we do one a month because there's 5 of us kids. Our parents are still around. There's each one of us has spouses, and now there's like 13
grandkids. Yeah.
So like there's like 5 birthdays in November. So we're gonna pound them out about the 18th this month. So yeah, just do it all in one day.
That's funny.
So
one thing we didn't hit, and I don't know how we are for time, but the sex hormones, it's something that my team, we work in BRCA mutated cancer or genetically mutated cancers, and so we're always talking about hormone levels and ovarian and prostate cancer and stuff. And you find that if you look at the scale of like what was a healthy testosterone, like in 2017, you could have a 1200 testosterone. It was considered fine. Now, like the ranges have changed, and now anything over 1,000, people are thinking, that's too much. It's too high. What I want people to remember is like they take these ranges on people that go get their blood work done, and those people that get their blood work done are usually sick, so it's starting to kind of skew the range. So like a 1,500 nanogram per deciliter testosterone in the 60s wasn't uncommon. So our grandparents walked around with more estrogen, more testosterone, more things because they weren't competing with the endocrine disrupting chemicals, the phytoestrogens, all these things. So the reason I say that is just to have an awareness that because you're in the normal range, you might not be optimally healthy. So right now I think the range is 300 to 1,000. That's testosterone. Then a free testosterone is like anything over 35.
That's a big range.
It's a huge range, and what's interesting? Like I said, I have my testosterone being low. If I was at 300 or 400, I can't feel the difference. You know what I mean? Because it's so negligible with what happens with the free testosterone and what happens from the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. There's a conversion from testosterone through aromatase to DHT through the 5-alpha reductase enzyme. So there's different. You really have to, I'd probably have to go from 300 to 1,000 to really feel it and move the needle. And at that point you have to get on a testosterone or something like that. But I tell people that is because 300 is in the range, but it's not optimal. So I just want people to be like, oh, I'm normal. Well, normal for you might be obviously normal for someone else, but I think these ranges are kind of deflated to a point where we're probably not optimal in anything. And the other thing is, like, we were talking about menopause, and that's an area of the world. I don't even know how you train women. Like if you're talking about diet, you're talking about supplementing hormones and stuff, because you have to think about cycles and you have to think about not even what time of the month, how old are they? Are they perimenopausal? All these things. And women, thyroid. You can talk about DHEA, pregnenolone, progesterone, all these cyclical things. And I think women, probably as much as women advocate for themselves, that's still in health and fitness and longevity, still probably the hardest rubrics to figure out is like, how do you take care of
it's
women?
so expensive.
So expensive. Yeah, because it's all a la carte. You know what I mean?
It's like $2,000 to go to a hormone doctor.
Yeah.
Not covered by insurance.
Right.
And that's just getting your first round of blood work. And then you have to get blood work after that. Like,
and then
it's
bother
so
your hormones
expensive.
and do all that kind of, yeah.
And I mean, there's so much correlation about mood and your hormone levels, especially for women in menopause, that women over 40 are more likely to commit suicide than at any other time in their lives.
Wow, that's crazy. But you think about what goes on in a woman's body. Mm-hmm. I mean, some of their stuff just essentially shuts off and shuts down. You think about when do men have heart attacks? Usually midlife, they have heart attacks. And that's because their testosterone's dropping and they don't have the conversion, because estrogen is very cardiovascular, protective. So you see a guy, he drinks, smokes dope, he doesn't eat right, he tails off and he has lower testosterone. Well, it's the conversion to estrogen, which is actually the cardiovascular. That's the important part of the sex hormones on our cardiovascular health. But a woman goes off a cliff.
Yeah.
So she gets to be in her 50s and 60s, and you see like the incidence of heart attack go through the roof. Because as they can have children, their estrogen's up, their hormones are better, and then it's like, all right, we're done with you. your hormones crash, and now you can have a heart attack and die.
Yeah.
And I know that's probably a little bit dramatic, but that's the way you feel about it, because you see women 60, 65 all of a sudden developing bad cardiovascular disease because they don't have estrogen. So that's another. I mean, that's a thing. Prevention would be worth a pound of cure if you could.
And most studies are done on men, not on women. So any studies pretty much around health and fitness have been done on men. And what I really liked about Stacey Sims' book, Roar, she talks about, like, we're not little men. Like, we should not be trained like little men. We are different.
Yeah.
And just talking about training through your cycle. We talk about the luteal phase in here all the time, like training on your luteal phase. And it's funny because the guys are just like, oh God, like,
here we go.
Yeah, here we go. We go into that discussion because it absolutely affects your strength and like the different levels in your
So
hormones.
tell me a little bit about that, because I guess that's a blind spot for me. Are you stronger, or like you have more hormones in luteal phase, or is it easier to train?
So you are definitely weaker in your luteal phase. So like when you go to move heavy weights,
there's no juice.
it's just nothing there.
Yeah.
And like you're tired, you're tanked. And it's a hard one. And I track my cycle on an app, and I'm like, all right, I'm in the luteal phase, not a big deal, move on. Because there are so many times you would just be like, why am I so weak? Why am I not progressing? And you get hard on yourself. And the fun thing is when like a lot of your strength testing days fall on those parts of your cycle, you get in your head about it.
Yeah.
So you have to like change up your training a little bit and just not take it. I have to remind myself not to take it personal. Like, it's not that I'm not strong. It's
just
that
not today.
this is happening with my hormones
Right.
today, and it's fine. And we often go in that little loop, and just having those conversations with women, because there's not a ton of research. There's not a lot of people talking about it.
Especially
So
to
you
be,
feel alone.
to your point, I mean, to especially be that specific, to answer a specific question, like how do you train in your luteal phase? How do you train in this phase? That's research that's probably never been done, or very little.
Yeah.
And I think, you start to get into the complexity of a study design, and that probably just goes to show you how much more complex. Honestly, in a lot of cases, you can throw testosterone at men and it might fix most of their issue, because that's their big driver. Now with women with these phases, like, they need more progesterone at certain times. They need more, testosterone at certain times. They need this, that, and that's
Nutrition around your cycle is maddening, because you're weak going into your period when you're craving everything, like your PMS time, like you want to eat everything, and you can eat, like, your body can burn up to 300 calories more.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So you want to eat more, and because you are mad at yourself, why am I wanting this food? Why do I want to eat this junk? Like,
fighting
it. And then your period comes and you're like, I'm not hungry. And you have to force yourself to eat. And it's just like this vicious cycle. But when you learn about it, you're like, okay, if I'm craving maybe this piece of chocolate, I will have dark chocolate in the house, in the freezer. I'll eat it
As
and I
opposed
move
to the
on.
Snickers
Instead
item.
of eating
Reese's
apple
Cups.
or this
Oh, yeah,
or this
yeah,
or this or this.
Oh,
to
so
try
you give
to-
yourself
yeah.
the space to say that's okay to
say.
have it, right?
Yes,
That's what you're saying.
because a lot of people they'll be like, no, I'll eat this apple, I'll eat this to fight this craving. And then they eat the apple, the pear, the banana, and eat the chocolate anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like giving yourself that space. And I do try to keep healthier options. Like, I'll just keep a dark chocolate bar frozen if it's something I want.
Snip a
But it seems after a while too, if you don't eat that stuff for a long time, you don't even really crave it
Yeah.
anymore. Like, I had Reese's for the kids for Halloween, and I had two of the little snack size ones, and I was like, that's enough. Like, it's
Yeah.
not really what I crave anymore, and you kind of lose that palate for it.
No, you're right. I think overexposure to like almost hedonic foods, like super high sweet, super high salty, or the combination of fats and carbs together crushes me, like pizza, ice cream. And these are all the things I'm like, I look at nutrition as protein now is the lever I talk about at home all the time, because it's a structural building block for enzymes, for hormones, for
Amino acids,
tissue,
yeah.
amino acids, right? That's what I'm drinking here. I've been fasting, because I ate a little bit more than I wanted to last night, so I'm fasting with just essential aminos. Now you think about carbs and fat as energy. Keto, you're drawing off your ketones, which is fat derived, or you're drawing off carbs, which most of us, are probably more carb burners. But if I look at those two things as my energy, I'm like, oh, okay, they're energy. Now, how much energy do I really need? And I should probably have that match my output or match how much I'm working. And once you start to think about your body as a system, a fuel-driven system, it does become a little bit easier. But you throw ice cream in front of me, or I taste it, or I taste pizza, it's just that I say hedonic, meaning it's almost like it overcomes me.
Yeah.
Like I could suck down 6 pieces of pizza.
Yeah, it's like your brain. It's almost like doing a drug. You can feel it in the back of your head whenever you
Dude,
take it. Yeah.
but I can tell you what, there's not that many calories in a Percocet.
Yeah.
which is you know what I mean? Like, but that's what you shouldn't do though.
No,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
you know, if you want to talk about that way, from a caloric standpoint.
And that's too, for me, one thing I think that steered me away from drinking is I like food. I like good food, and if I'm going to have calories, I want to get them from food.
Amen.
And
Amen.
that's I think that's important for me. And talking about like pizzas, I've learned last night I actually made 2 different style of pizzas. I found a healthier option for crust. I did one with like a really low calorie sauce. I used turkey bacon, cheese.
Yeah.
And then I flipped the other one with, I made it a pineapple. So I had a little bit of pineapple on there, some sugar-free barbecue sauce, and ham. So just to make it something different, because I was like, I want pizza.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, do I want 2,000 calories worth of like this much pizza from Papa John's, or do I want to just make my own? And I put like mixed broccoli slaw on it. It's amazing. Like you can flip the recipes you love and make them more attainable to the goals that you want. Yeah.
That's important. That's a skill I think more young people need to learn.
Yes.
You're like, I'm hungry for something, and it goes back to like rewarding yourself. Like, I want to be able to, like, my kids leave the house and I know, like, well, I've got to eat for performance or my goals or whatever, but how to make yourself healthy options. I didn't know that. I just knew there was one way to make pizza. It came out of a Red Robin bag. You remember that shit that you were eating that growing up? It was so average, and I was like, we're having pizza now. It's such a big deal.
I still, like, I remember one time going to the Harmony Fair and eating about 7 slices of pizza, and it was just a Tony's cheap pizza, and every once in a while I buy it, and it just takes me back, and I'm like, I love this.
That's what they were serving at the fair. What a sham.
I know.
What a sham.
Well, it's like it's a thing in your head too of the convenience. Like yesterday, I was like, I could just order Papa John's and go pick it up and go home. And I don't have to cook, I don't have to make a mess in the kitchen, all of these things. I'm like, I'm about to start a nutrition challenge. I'm about to talk to people about this. Like, I need to get in the habit of doing this often.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that just turning those things in your mind again and getting back on track when it's so much easier just to drive through the drive-thru and pick up a pizza. You can make it on your own.
Convenience and comfort are the 2 things that are killing us.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like, it's so easy. And I that was me. I'm like, well, I didn't spend a lot of money on this food, so I shouldn't feel bad. I ate 3 hot dogs at Sheetz, and that's $4. So it's not a big deal. Yeah, I ate, pork lips and ankles. Whatever else they put on, and some boom boom sauce. And I think I'm doing myself a favor, So, but anyway, I do want to ask you guys both a question, like from supplementing, from a supplemental standpoint. You from like the cognitive, the mental health, that kind of stuff. Have you found supplements that you think these work or this helped me, or because it's always something I'm looking for. People always ask my opinion of those. Is there something you think?
I'm not whenever I stopped doing stupid stuff, I kind of went away from supplements. I went away from all that stuff. I try to do stuff when I can, just naturally, just good food and stuff like that. I try not to take anything else because I have such a negative connotation towards that stuff. And I know that's probably not right.
I don't think it's wrong either, because I do that too. I don't want to have an infused chemo drug or something in my body. I sell it. Mine's a pill, but I mean, I think because my family has had troubles with that. Like, I don't want to put anything in my body that probably doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
So I can honor that.
I try to do all cognitive stuff, and I try to read, and I try to do that. And one thing I did learn is, discipline has a much higher rate of success than intention does.
Dude.
So I try to follow that. Law of physics, object in motion stays in motion. So try to keep moving, try to keep doing that stuff.
Yeah.
But after listening to you guys talk today, I do, at about 30, I started getting blood tests and stuff like that done every single year. So I do try to pay attention to that stuff. I did take a statin for a long time until I got my cholesterol down naturally. Now I don't have to anymore.
Good for you, man.
But I take enough meds I take Celexa and Lamictal for being bipolar. So I just, my fiance is epileptic. She has taken enough drugs in her day. She tries to get away from that stuff too. So I don't, but I know there's stuff out there that is beneficial. I don't know enough about this stuff. This stuff's, you just spoke a bunch of Spanish to me, and when I re-listen to this, I'll try to take it in a little bit more. But that's what I try to do, is just try to do things kind of naturally without stuff.
Yeah, but I think there's a certain aversion to like putting stuff in your body, especially if you've had an addiction or had trouble with anything. It's just like, do I trust that this is going to do what it's supposed to do?
Yeah.
You know, and I guess I go through a little bit of that too. But I do supplement. You know, I think there's definitely some supplements that, because they're kind of either in our body already, like melatonin or creatine, which comes in our food, that I do feel safe around because I'm going to, ingest it anyway. How about you? I mean, is there some things that you're like?
So I use a clean protein. That's something that's super important to me. And I do know that the threshold after working out, you should have amino acids. So I do take a clean protein that is certified, that I know that there's nothing in it. I take it right after I work out in the morning. And in my I do take a pre-workout. In that, I put in, I know, I work out at 5 a.m, so I need something.
Yeah.
I use magnesium. I use a vitamin C supplement. I use, and these are all droppers, like liquids.
Oh, yeah.
I use vitamin K and
D3?
D, yep. And I put that in, we're like little like experiments, like
Beakers.
Yep, and that we use that. I take melatonin at night to help myself sleep. I take creatine, and that's really it. I don't take any extra.
You crushed my list.
Yeah.
So I think most people that are at least willing to experiment come to that same list. And I wrote that down and I wanted to ask you those guys that question to see. I have D3 and K2, and I think D3 is obviously important because we're in seasonal depression time. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's been study after study that says it supports immunity. Then K2 works in conjunction with magnesium and D3, and K2 helps shuttle calcium out of soft tissue, like your heart stuff, into bone. So I think that combination is big. Magnesium, we supplement magnesium every night. Now, the two that I think that you didn't have, creatine, I agree 100%. My girls only take 1.5 grams a day in the form of a chewy, but it's good for cognition. It tops off their creatine stores in their muscle. My Gianna, who's a basketball player, is high output all week, and then Gemma, my little one, she's still working out and doing stuff, and she still needs the support because she's not eating enough creatine in her diet. And we could talk about melatonin another time. I just think it's such a fantastic. It's not a hormone like testosterone that you add it into the system and the system works on a reverse feedback loop and shuts it down. It's actually light derived. So you can supplement and keep the light out of your eyes, and you get your normal melatonin production, and you can get supplemental. But there's studies over 20 milligrams, which is a high dose. My wife can handle that. I feel like I get roofied if I take over 10. You know what I mean? I feel like
that's a lot, yeah.
But there's even a COVID protocol. If you want to get over the COVID symptoms quicker, that 3 milligrams is kind of the number. So anything from 3 to 25, I think, is fantastic. Now, I do know there's a Dr. Ryder from Texas who's like the godfather of melatonin. If people want to really get into melatonin, he's been taking over 100 to 120 milligrams for 20-some years. He's in his late 80s. He still teaches. So there's definitely something there. But the two that I hit, and not that I'm recommending these to anyone, but selenium and iodine. So iodine, especially in light of how bad we're not eating shellfish, we're not eating sea vegetables.
Yeah.
Our salt, we all got away from like iodized salt because now we're using like Himalayan or Celtic sea salt. And all these fancy salts have no iodine.
I use Celtic, yeah.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's bougie. But the point is like we still need to figure out how to supplement iodine. So when I make my wife's coffee, she doesn't know this. She'll know this now. I drop a couple drops in her thing. My girls take a sea kelp vitamin. I put a little dish of vitamins on these guys. They're like, give me a freaking break. They sit there for days sometimes when I'm not on them. I'll take them.
The thing about most multivitamins, you just pee them out.
100%.
You just take them and you pee them out. And a lot of people that are just drinking plain water constantly, you're just peeing it out. That's why I add a little Celtic salt to my water.
Makes a ton of sense.
So that it's actually getting absorbed into my cells. And that's stuff that I learned from Stacey Sims.
Yeah, that's in that book?
Yeah,
I wrote that
fantastic.
down. I'm going to get that. So,
yeah, I genuinely appreciate everything you said today. This is great. I'm really looking forward to re-listening to this and taking in some of this stuff and applying some of it to myself too. But one or two things that you could give somebody advice that is struggling mentally, physically. What do you think that would be? The first steps?
Yeah, I just think you said something earlier that made me think about a body emotion stays emotion. It's easy to get in that place where you're like, someone's going to come save me. And I don't think that ever is the case. It's nice to have a hand up, but I think and that's why the cognitive behavioral therapy, reading the Stoicism, we didn't talk about journaling. I journal every time I'm in a bad place. I journal about my future self, but I think it's just action to be the type of person you want to be. You know, if you're not where you need to be, what are the couple habits that you could form that are going to get you there? And sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. I mean, if you're in a bad place mentally, I mean, you know, if you're in a bad place mentally, at least the habit and the discipline of creating things that you want to see in your life, they start to show up. And it's like, so that'd be the first thing, is like, just work in the right direction. The second thing is give yourself a pass once in a while to say, it's okay that I'm hurting, or it's okay that I'm upset. Because I would be like, I'm doing so well, and I take a step back and I'd be mad at myself, and I'd be like, dude, I'm not doing something right. And you know, I think all of our journeys aren't just a straight shot to the moon. It's ups and downs. So I just think having a little bit of patience with yourself. But yeah, those are the two things. And anything worth having is probably on the other side of some kind of hard work. You know, and having mental clarity and having health and those kind of things. I mean, you know, you live it every day. What you do is not easy. What you've been through is not easy, but it's made you a better person. And I think, you know, that's kind of what when we started, I wanted to say, you know, make your mess your message. You know, and that's just it. It's like whatever you've been through, you can either dwell on it's been bad or whatever, you can grow from it. And I don't want to be one chapter of a book. I don't want to be, this happened to me at one point in my life. It's like, let's write the next chapter. So.
Yeah, and I know personally with me, when things start to go bad, I start to internalize and stop reaching out for help, and then they start to get really off the rails, and then I'm like, stick to your fundamentals, stick to your basics, get back to what got you here in the first place.
I love
and
that.
I do it all the time, and I internalize everything, and I'm like, I'm not going to ask this person for help. I'm not going to ask anybody for help.
Oh, I'm asking Google for validation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'm using AI. What are my friends thinking of me? Yeah.
Mine is when I like take a break and I don't do anything about learning, and I'm just like taking a break and listening to a book that I want to read or listen to, and I feel really guilty. Like, you could be spending this time working on this, and this. I have to be like, it's okay to pause. Pause. You can go back to reading this menopause book later. You can go back to learning about mental health later. Do things that also give your mind the freedom to just learn. And like this past week, I just listened to Lisa Marie Presley's book, and it was fantastic. And it was a lot of it was mental health related. And it just kind of gave me that little like refresher and break I needed, and hearing someone else's story. And now I'm like back into, you know, listening to health and books about menopause. So
I'm
take a break. I mean, it's really interesting. It's so interesting.
Exciting life, you know what I mean?
I'm just glad we did this. I switched jobs in the last couple months and haven't been as disciplined with the gym because I'm working out of town now and not getting back. My dog, I had to put my dog down, so I've been in a bad spot. Like, just mentally, you know, like just having you guys talk today really motivated me a little bit more. So I thank you guys for everything you did today too.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys having me. It was an honor, and it was fun, and it wasn't nearly as nerve-wracking as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's what I told you. I don't even know how we went, but it was like we covered 38 minutes, and it felt like 10. So this is fantastic.
No, you guys are doing a good thing here.
Want to have you back on. We want to do a podcast sometime on suicide in middle-aged men with Ryan Wagner, who did the emotional intelligence one with us.
Yeah,
and he wants to talk about blue-collar workers, and that's how we grew up and how to help some of them. And I think I want to invite you back on for that.
Yeah,
one
man,
too,
happy to do it.
I also like to talk to you about like cancer. Like, I think that you have a whole world to share about that.
Absolutely. I think this will be a great relationship.
Hey, as long as we're, you know, your guys' objective is to help people, I'm happy to do it. Awesome. And I think that's what you guys are doing. So thank you.
We're not selling them anything, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't have anything interesting left to sell.
Side by side. All right, thank you guys. We appreciate it, and we'll see you guys next time. And love you guys.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Go outside.
Justin doesn't.
Yeah. Wow.